our next session, Preparing Workforce for the Future of Industries of Tomorrow, presented by Michigan URC.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have a special treat today because we're going to talk about talent. I know how many of you out there love to talk about talent. I've been talking about it forever. I see my colleagues down there at the universities. And so my name is Brittany Affolter-Kane. I am the Executive Director for Michigan's University Research Corridor, which is an alliance of Michigan State University, the University of Michigan, and Wayne State University, basically our state's three R1 institutions. And it is my pleasure to be on this panel with my colleague Jonathan Nipper from Boston Consulting Group, as well as three of our top students. So right next to me I have Brody Kavanaugh, who is a third year from Wayne State University, also the president of Warrior Racing Team. We're going to hear a little bit more about that. Next to him we have Courtney Cruz, who is a second year at Michigan State University and the project manager, I hope I got that right, Courtney. Yes, okay, project manager of Baja Racing Team at MSU. And then next to her, we have Ganesh Gable, who is a recent graduate from the University of Michigan with a master's in automotive engineering. So this is definitely his jam here. So I'm delighted to have everyone with me. The way that we have structured this panel is going to be more interactive. And so do think about what your questions are going to be towards the end. This is a great opportunity to hear from the talent why they are choosing this industry to work in, what gets them really excited, what their studies are like, and what they're looking for once they do graduate. They're our next leaders in this industry. And so, but with that, they'll also be really interested in the questions you have for them. So we hope that is an engaging component. We'll give you all about 15 minutes at the end. We'll talk for about 30. So this is just going to be a conversation. My colleague Jonathan and I are going to give you a brief, because this is what we get paid to do, to talk about our work. So we'll give you a brief overview on the URC and a brief overview of the work that Jonathan and his colleagues at BCG have done for the state, mapping and analyzing the talented workforce of the automotive industry to set the stage. And then we'll get into the questions, because the real stars are our students. So with that, let me give you a little bit, let me do my job about the URC. These three universities collectively had an economic impact in the state of nearly $24 billion, which, if I can put that into some context for you, that is like the last time we had this show in Detroit. How many of you were here in September of 2023? Yeah, me too. It was super fun. But the last time that show was here, it generated close to $1 billion in economic impact from that week. So the URC over the course of a year is like throwing this auto show 24 times. So it's pretty significant. Similarly, it would be equivalent to throwing the NFL draft, which we recently had this year to much success, 144 times across the state, to have the same kind of economic impact of these institutions to our state. So with that, I want to get into a little bit more of what our universities contribute. And specifically, we make major contributions in research and talent development for this industry. And we have almost more than $500 million over the last 5 years have been spent at our institutions doing mobility-related research. Similarly, we're doing almost $700 million over the last 5 years in advanced manufacturing, $1.3 billion over the last 5 years in sustainability-related research, which certainly has a lot of tentacles within this. And in terms of talent, we benchmark our three universities to 7 other university innovation clusters in the country, places you probably heard of in Silicon Valley, Southern California, Route 128 in Boston, and North Carolina's Research Triangle Park, among others. And what we can tell you is we are a leader when it comes to preparing graduates in fields that are in high demand by this industry. So we're very proud of that. So I'm done doing the URC commercial. I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Britt. Really appreciate it. And I'm super excited to be here and talk about this topic. Last week I was in Las Vegas at CES. This week now at the auto show, and so firsthand got to see a lot of the amazing innovations happening in the mobility industry, And now on this panel, get to talk about the talent that's going to drive the next wave of innovation in the mobility space. And I would just start by saying that this topic of talent in the mobility industry, I can't emphasize enough just how critical it is. And not just for the state, for the country as a whole, employers across the US. When we did a survey of executives across a variety of companies in the mobility industry, 95% of executives rated the availability of skilled labor as important or very important in terms of where they think about locating their companies and how they think about growing their companies. So this is top of mind even at the CEO level. And with that, it's important to note that the industry needs more talent. We need to grow our talent base, and the whole topic of this is the future of mobility talent. So what is mobility talent and what's important in that space? Before we launch into Q&A, I'll just give a couple points of what we're seeing in this. But auto and mobility has a very broad and rich set of jobs and talent needs to keep the industry growing and going. And so there's offerings for everyone and talent needed across a wide variety of areas. However, we did some work over the last couple of years with the state of Michigan and with others, gathering employers in this industry to think about, well, what are the roles that are both going to be in high demand, of which there are many, but also where there are not enough people who are going into that field. So the supply is constrained. And what came out of that is there's both skilled and unskilled jobs where that's the case. With skilled jobs, the roles that came to the top are electrical engineers, software developers, and industrial and mechanical engineers. And we got 3 mechanical engineers here on the stage today, so they're helping fill some of that gap. But those were the areas where employers were seeing key shortages. Also, on the non-skilled or non-degree less skilled or non-degree roles, which are also just critically important, production workers, first-line supervisors, that's eased a little bit with some of the slowing growth in EV, but there's still a critical gap there as well. And that's all in the context of, we know in the state of Michigan, we did some work with Business Leaders for Michigan early last year, looking at the talent pipeline for the state. And in absence of any action, we're going to see a shortage of 400,000 roles in the state, which, to put that in a context, that's about 10% of Michigan's current workforce. And that's due to slower population growth, the mismatch of supply and demand, so not enough people going into those roles that I mentioned in engineering. And speaking of engineering, not just if I take a look beyond the state, we've done some work looking nationwide at engineering talent, and there is a big potential gap in engineering talent, similar in scale, but just looking at engineering, of 400,000 roles. And again, for critical engineering roles such as software, civil, industrial engineers, where there's going to be gaps as a country that we have to fill by developing our talent pipeline. And so this is critically important. And to do that, we need to expand the pools of talent that we're looking at, and the students we're talking with here are a key important part of understanding that. When we've talked to students, and we've done a lot of focus groups and also survey work, some of the things we're hearing about the mobility industry is that there's a lot of excitement. It's a little bit of a paradox, because there's a lot of excitement around all the innovation happening, right? AV, EV, addressing some of the challenges of our time, climate change, and new technologies. But at the same time, a lot of the auto companies are perceived at times as lagging behind, overly bureaucratic, and some of the students were showing preference for newer companies, startup companies with less bureaucracy. We also heard that students have a view of good access to job openings. They understand there's roles available, but sometimes what those roles weren't super clear, and also the more personal touch of recruiting was missing, right? So you send your resume over in a portal and it goes into a black hole. Companies have an opportunity to up their game on recruiting with in-person and experiences for the students they're recruiting. So these are some of the themes that we've been hearing in our work as we do a lot in the talent space as BCG. And now I'd love to hear from our panel here a little bit about what they think and if some of those themes resonate. And maybe to get it started, when we think about mobility, why have you all had interest in mobility? what excites you about it? You know, the industry is going through major shifts towards clean tech, electrification, you know, as the industry, you know, incorporates other leading edge technologies. How does that factor into your interest in the field? You know, what gets you excited about automotive and mobility?
We'll start with our recent graduate first.
Okay. So, yeah, so for me, the whole idea of mobility started from very childhood. So when I started growing up, I used to saw all those supercars manufacturing shows on Discovery channels. So that kind of like got me interested in the automobile sector. And I used to always love car going around. And when I joined my undergrad, I was a part of Baja, which is a racing competition. So I was team captain there, and while managing the team, I really loved the work there. And this, after I joined my graduate studies at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, it's like the autonomous industry and the EV industry is growing, and through that we can have so much of contribution to the society, because mobility is a thing which everyone uses every day, and it has a lot of impact on the people. So that's what I love about this industry, the sustainability factor, the kind of technical things which we can do in terms of making the EV mobility safer and sustainable is really what I am amazed, and I love to work for that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that you mentioned safety, and I know there's, you know, several organizations here working a lot on safety in you know, mobility, the Kiefer Foundation, and all the tech around ADAS and autonomous driving. That's certainly a big driver of the tech in the industry.
I got interested in mobility because of the complexity of mobility, and it's something that we use every day, and a lot of people take that for granted, I feel. Going into mobility, I kind of realized that there's a lot of niche things that not a lot of people know about mobility, like data collecting, and there's a lot of electrical involved alongside mechanical and manufacturing related. Putting all of these together into one outcome is just such a cool thing to see, and you don't really get the opportunity to see that until you throw yourself into the industry of mobility.
Yeah, and for me, the big thing was, since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to make things go fast and go boom somehow. And so that was a main driving force for me. But I've also noticed over the past 3 years, I've personally worked as a teaching assistant at Wayne State University, teaching the introductory course for computer-aided design and also just a couple other things. And it's fun seeing the younger students get involved, and they kind of get excited when you hear like, oh, there's a race car on campus, or oh, there's this and that. And I think that's kind of a driving force, because automotive and mobility overall is leading a lot of innovative technologies, and it's where we see it the most. So I think that's really important.
Can you talk a little bit, I'm not going to get into the next question, but I actually come from a racing family. I swear I don't do that on the lodge, but I don't really understand. It's embarrassing. I don't really understand racing in this context. Tell us about the racing team, the Warrior Racing Team, the Baja Racing Teams that both of you contributed to in your universities. Tell us, what is that for the uninitiated?
Yeah, so both of our cars are upstairs. I'm part of Formula SAE, which is run by the Society of Automotive Engineers International. And it's essentially collegiate students building a micro Formula One car. It has all of the data acquisition capabilities, it has all the engineering involved in doing that, except it's on a much more smaller scale and a much more individualized scale. But it's also fun because you get to run against teams. Like, we competed against Singapore last year and Poland, but also we work together with like Oakland University and Michigan State University, and so it's really cool. I've driven the car, it's really fast. So
can I drive it?
We'll talk after.
I'll wear a helmet, I promise. How about you?
So Baja SAE is kind of like a mini automotive off-road racing vehicle, like an ATV that you would ride, like a Polaris or I'm trying to think of other. But it's a mini car, and we take it to off-road, and we go over these jumps, these crazy jumps that you might not even think of driving over with, let's just say, a Formula racing car. So we have to design this car in a way where we can go over rocks, go over hills, go over any kind of terrain that you can possibly imagine, and then we compete nationally throughout America.
So it's a little, help me understand, Courtney, is it like outdoor rec a bit? Would it fall into that category of racing outdoor rec vehicles? Outdoor rec being, well, like a Polaris, ATVs, things like that. In fact, there was some race last time I was in Marquette, Michigan. How many of you have been to Marquette, Michigan? Yes, all right. We have some Yoopers in the house, I think. But up there, they were running some kind of race and up and down the mountains and the rocks and this and that. And it sounds like what you're describing.
Yeah, I would say it's a little similar. We do kind of test it in multiple different areas. Like we test suspension, we test the acceleration, and we also test the endurance to make sure that the car can actually withstand damage. And it has to last for a 4-hour-long race.
Wow. Ganesh, you are a graduate now and you had that experience. What would you want to tell all of us from your experience, what you gained from it, and your fellow URC students here who are going through it now?
So I also was a part of Baja in my undergrad, and it's very great to be in that kind of competition early in your career, because there you have different departments. So when I am now doing my internship, so we have like different kinds of departments. So that's the same which we have to do in Baja. You must have like suspension department, a braking team, and electronics team and powertrain team. And to manage those things and to work in team environment setting is really helpful when you grow up in your career and when you join the industry. So that kind of helps to lay your understanding about the team and how to build products and how a product is assembled and how it is integrated with different kind of things. So that helps a lot. So I always prefer to my juniors or whoever my fellow mates to join this kind of competitions and to do a lot of projects, internships, which later on helps on their career when you join the industry.
Yeah, that's great. And it's really fun to hear the theme of these organizations really driving and maintaining interest in the space. I know for me personally, in undergrad, I also studied engineering, and for me it was solar car. And I was on I don't know if any of you got involved in that, but similar dynamic of you get real hands-on experience. It's great to see that that's really a factor helping drive interest in mobility for you all.
I didn't know you did solar car. All right, I'm the only one here who didn't do anything cool like that. But tell me, like you could go, the mobility industry, the automotive industry is all over the world. I mean, it's a global industry, and Michigan obviously is a very important competitive node. Well, you could go anywhere. Why did you choose to go to URC universities? And now that you're there, what are you gaining that you like in terms of experiences that will lead you to where you want to be?
So first I want to talk about why Wayne State, I think, has benefits for engineering students in comparison to a University of Michigan or a Michigan State University. Not to say that there's any dip in quality, there's more students to faculty than there is at the bigger school. That's just how it is. And I think personally you end up getting good attention, but also good opportunities. So being with URC, and then also just having a footprint in Michigan, you're also able to partner with companies and these things. Just last week, we took our race car to the Ford wind tunnel, and we were able to do complete testing on the aero package with it, without it. And you're not able to get those opportunities in many other places. So I think that's really important and something I like to keep a strong, firm grip on.
That sounds great. Courtney?
So I chose Michigan State University because of the broad range of majors that are available on hand. It is, in fact, a bigger school, like what Brody mentioned. But I feel like being in a bigger school, you get the opportunity to take the initiative and step out of your comfort zone to reach out to faculty, because when it's time to come down to industry, it's you searching. It's not anyone else that is going to do it for you, essentially. So that's why I chose to go to where I am today.
Yeah, so for me, like I did my undergrad in India and I am originally from India. So when I was searching for my master's university, when I was shortlisting my university list, and so I was searching for some automotive engineering major master's university. And there are very few universities there, and most of them are in Michigan. And Michigan is a hub of mobility where there are a lot of mobility companies are there. So that's why I applied to Michigan, University of Michigan, and they have a lot of like programs where I could participate, and I used to see all those programs before applying, and like the industry specific programs where they are collaboration with different kinds of startups for autonomous vehicle industry. So that's why I applied to Michigan, and luckily I got admit.
So I'm hearing hands-on, small class size ratio faculty to students, breadth of programs and focus areas that you can have, and being able to come in and have these unique opportunities at a place like the University of Michigan. All of you have opportunities to connect with industry folks, to do the hands-on work on a racing team or research. That's kind of, am I getting it right? Yes. Good. Those are going in my talking points from here on out, what you just said. I want to get into also the fact that you're young, and some of us are not young, and we are learning very quickly on how to use new technologies. How many here are actively using generative artificial intelligence or generative AI? Yeah? How many of you are maybe afraid of it? Yeah, both. So we've got a lot of new technologies, whether it is that or it's the new connected autonomous technologies. I just went on a road trip with my aging parents, and I took my car because I really didn't want to drive all the way to Myrtle Beach from here in a 20-year-old Buick LeSabre. Call me crazy. So we took my car, which has a lot of bells and whistles of more modern cars, including eyesight and lane assist and things like that. My father is an old school driver, bus school driver, or school bus driver, and he is not wanting any of those features. I mean, we're seeing more autonomous features getting onto regular cars. The adoption rate is a bit of a challenge. And I was really surprised. I never thought my father would adopt any of these, that he would just grumble the whole time being in my car. How do I turn it all off, right? And he actually ended up liking it. So from your perspective as young people, and you're going to be the leaders in this industry, and we're only going to be getting more and more technology, 2 questions for you. 1, what are you seeing, and how do you want to incorporate some of these new technologies, whether it is AI or other forms, into the work that you're doing long term? And 2, how do you think about the old people who need to also continue being mobile and using more modern cars that are safer and smarter? And you can just a jump ball, anyone can pick up first.
So yeah, so I can start. So what I feel is autonomous driving, like especially the AI is more of, we have to see it as a helping hand in our thing. So I feel it is more of the helping hands which you need while you're driving, like the ADAS system, the autonomous driving system. So whenever you are doing a highway driving, you kind of get tired of just going down the road when you don't have to follow any turns. When you just have to go straight like for 100 miles, you don't want to do, you want some helping hands who can stay in your lane. So eventually, which I feel the AI and all the autonomous driving features eventually get more safer by time, and it will help us in reaching the place safer with easily with very ease of effort. So that's what I feel about the autonomous driving thing. Yeah.
So how I feel about the growing industry, a lot of what my team works on is a lot of modeling. We work with drones to try to collect scan data to improve our track that we use for Baja. And we've also started to implement things like previous capstone projects to create our own dyno that we can eventually use in Baja. And we've also done strain gauging to collect wheel force transducer data. This can be used to collect all the forces to see how it affects our car, essentially. So seeing this kind of is crazy to me because you don't usually see it when you're driving. You don't think of, oh, wow, this is actually, these processes are improving our cars that we use today. And seeing students being able to make their own of something that we can use in industry is crazy.
So it's getting into the complexity that you like.
Yes.
Yeah. How about you, Brody?
Yeah, so with our car and our goal, the goal is obviously to go fast and not boom. But one of those things that we can do now is there's so many tools out there. There's tools that can make parts for you, like, or give it to it, tell it to optimize, maybe take weight off, add material, add strength. And those are cool, but we're also seeing a lot of challenges with those because often when you use an AI model currently, at least for our purposes, which is either data analysis, sometimes we use it to learn. Like maybe there's a complex topic and you can tell it to teach it to me like I'm 3. That's important, but the issue with some of them is that it's hard to take the ideas that the AI has and convert them into real life. Like certain complex geometry on a part you might not be able to make without some super expensive machine that's only found in Texas. And so that's something that we're trying to work through, and something that I think will get better over time.
One thing I didn't hear any of you really mention heavily is EV and electrification. And I'd be curious, especially given the 3 of you are mechanical engineers, your thoughts on electrification and how you see that kind of playing into automotive and mobility innovation. And I know even when I was in school, many years ago now, mechanical engineering was starting to shift to more integration with electronics, software. You have mechatronics now, which kind of melds those 2 worlds. How are you seeing the shift to EV, and is that playing into some of what you're doing actively in school and preparing yourselves for that as future areas where you'll spend time in your career?
So I feel mechanical engineering has definitely evolved. So, but it is kind of a basic to know the things, how that works, but it has more to do with the integration later on, like doing the controls of EV and doing the software of EV. So if you don't understand the hardware on the very basic level, so you can't have the knowledge to actively control it, which is very essential in electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. So I feel a lot of coursework and a lot of things are evolved in the coursework where we are learning more about the controls of the system during mechanical engineering and also about the EVs, because overall the whole curriculum of our study is somehow influenced by the industry. Whatever happening in the industry, that's got into our curriculum. So that's what I feel. It's more of integration role now and more of software development where you have to have some mechanical knowledge too.
That's great.
So for electrification, I think it's a very interesting thing for all engineers to be looking into. Electrification is starting to be implemented into basic everyday things, and especially in mobility. And for our Baja team, we don't do EV yet, and it's kind of interesting to see that teams like in India do EV Baja.
Oh, interesting.
And it's one of those things that I know my organization, we kind of look at it with open minds, like, oh, that exists. And I kind of find it interesting for the future, especially to grow upon. Maybe 20, 30 years down the line, a Baja SAE will be EV. You never know.
For me, it's mostly about intention. So where I think electrification is super important is the trucks and cars and things that are running all the time, all day. Specifically your 18-wheelers, your big trucks, your semi-trucks, because those are the ones that are going to create the most emissions. And with EVs, that's a lot of what you're trying to defeat, is come back on those. And so I think that's where the focus should be, in my opinion. For our team, we are interested in the design of EV and moving forward with that. But there are a lot of costs and a lot of new knowledge that you have to gain that maybe if you're a combustion team, you don't have any knowledge on yet because you've only done boom pow for the past 20 years. And so that's one thing that's holding us back, is like just getting into that space and slowly moving into it. That's something very important to keep in mind. But I think overall, the big trucks, the big utilities, those I think should definitely incentivize and see electrification.
I have a number of other questions I want to ask, but I want to give everyone else an opportunity. But right before that, to prime the pump a little bit, no pun intended, tell us a little bit about what, as you're looking from transitioning from academia into the workforce, what do you want employers to know about you and your cohort, your people, your fellow students, as you're looking to make that gap? What do you want to know, and what do you want them to know? You can do one or both of those answers.
That we have more experience than we can talk about at a young age. Being on the team, the core success of it is finding weird solutions to problems most people don't have. We learn how to weld, we learn how to zip tie things together that otherwise probably shouldn't be, just to make things work and find solutions and push through something and problem solve. The other thing that's important is these programs are project management simulations. We're ordering from companies, we're working with companies, suppliers, we're getting parts, we're making the parts, we're trying to assemble, things don't work out. It's a constant battle, and doing it at such a young age propels you forward because you have that skill set from the beginning. So that's what's important to me, and something that I'd like to voice as much as possible.
Excellent.
Kind of adding on to what Brody said, I would like employers to know that a lot of students like us make mistakes, especially from the beginning. I feel like a lot of students, like myself included, are a little scared to go into industry because we look at industry like this huge thing, and we're just in academia.
And making mistakes for your generation is, I have a couple children your age. It seems making you want to be perfect. It's hard. So we need to let you know it's okay. That's a learning opportunity. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
And I also know that a lot of students are scared to present in public scenery in industry because you might have an HR standing in the back of the room and you are standing in front of this screen trying to present your idea, but it's hard because anxiety kicks in and you realize sometimes it's hard.
It's hard. I promise you get better the more you do it. I promise. Ines?
Yeah. So adding to this point, I feel industry should have more collaboration with the universities, with the students who are studying a particular specialization, and they should have some collaboration, some projects where they can solve the real world problems, whatever is happening. And because students have very new viewpoint of every problem, so they can have some value out of it. So I also during my masters, I was a part in Tech Lab, which is at MCT, and there I was working with a startup named Kapum. So Kapum is based out of Istanbul. So that startup is doing low-cost 3D mapping. So they gave it us initial proof of concept idea where we worked on and we developed the solution, and we shared with them like, this is what we are planning to do and this is how we can solve this thing. We were a group of 4 people and we did this for 2 semesters along, and we got like 6 credits for my coursework. So it was really good to solve something which is relevant in the industry. So that kind of helps me to, whenever I am giving some interviews for the industry, I kind of tell them about my experience with the industry level problems.
That's great. Well, we'll open it up. We have mics on either side of the seats for those burning questions. You can come right up and ask a question. If you don't, I will use the Socratic method and call on people. So, yes, sir. While he's making his way, I do want to make a plug. You can see the work of these students and their colleagues up there. They each have booths and they're fantastic. Go see the cars, they're super fun. Sir, introduce yourself and let us know your question.
I'm John Pobosik from the Flint area. I worked for General Motors for 42 years. And the thing that bothers me about the electric vehicles is, what do you do with the batteries after they wear out? You know, where is the pile going to be?
Where's the...
Is there any technology that's going to change that and utilize those?
That is a good question.
That's my question.
Does anyone want to take that first? Anyone want to? I mean, I think Jonathan and I could, but...
Yeah, so I feel whenever we are looking for electric vehicle, we have to see the complete life cycle of that electric vehicle. And battery is the most expensive part of electric vehicle. So there are a lot of industry and a lot of research going on into the recycling of the battery, like how can we recycle it, get the metals out of it, lithium, and again, turn it into a new battery pack. So a lot of research is going on. I know it's more of like people hate electric vehicle because of the battery thing, and I personally feel that hybrid is a better way to go for the sustainability and the future of mobility than a complete EV, because hybrid has benefits of both engine and the motor. And eventually we have to look for whatever is the best efficient way to move our mobility faster. Yeah.
That's that's much better than how I would have answered it. So, but I do want to pick up a couple things about that. And we have faculty, some who are actually here in the audience, talking about the life cycle of these batteries and trying to engineer and design the pieces for the entire lifespan. And obviously geopolitical issues being what they are, and sustainability issues with climate change becomes more and more of an imperative. And we're even seeing partnerships with Argonne Lab in Chicago, where they have an entire battery recycling program similar to what we've been doing on our campuses. So very good question, thank you. We have another one right there.
Good afternoon. Jonathan mentioned at the beginning that we're facing a challenge of a shortage of talent. I presume both for the industry and for the state of Michigan.
Yes.
And I would ask the students, you know, what can we as a state and as an industry do to attract more people into the industry?
And can you also just say, that's a great question, can you say your name and organization?
I'm JV De La Fuente. I'm with Southeast Michigan Community Alliance, and I manage the talent pillar for the GEM grant.
And will you say just a minute about GEM, what that is?
GEM is the Global Epicenter of Mobility. It's a Build Back Better Regional Challenge grant, about $50 or so million. And the purpose of the grant is to prepare the region for the transition from internal combustion, not just to electric, but just other technologies, a broader definition of mobility. So it's drones, it's marine, it's all things, it's IT. as it relates to mobility.
You guys are doing incredible work there, so thank you for giving that. So back to the students, and you just repeat the question for them again, real quick.
Oh, what can the state and the industry do to help retain and attract your colleagues into the industry and the state?
You want to go?
Yeah, okay. So according to me, what industry can do is have some kind of internships program where they can directly go to some universities, because there are a lot of internship opportunities which kind of, if company is not that, like the startup is not that famous, people usually don't apply to that to that startup, to that role. And if the students don't get industry experience, they kind of don't get the exposure to go in that industry. So what I feel we can have is the industry and the people can go to the university and directly recruit interns for the summers and have the students work for that company for that particular 3 months of time and have some experience on the real world problems and grow their interest in the field. So yeah, that's what I feel. Most of the students, fellow students which I talk to, they kind of had a hard time getting internships, applying to that, and they don't get the calls applying with their resume. So they can directly recruit from some local universities, take some physical interviews, and that's it, work for the summers.
So getting some real world exposure
real world
before
experience.
you have to graduate and go into industry. That's great. Any thoughts from?
For me, I feel like the younger generation may be scared to approach mobility. They may see a car and think it's too complex and scary and it's just too much work. But my advice would be to not be afraid to take initiative. There's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of people that you can meet to network with, and they are there to help, kind of like a tool. And you're not alone if you're interested and you're scared, but we all chose this as something to go into, not because it was easy, but it was something that we could grow on.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I heard from Ichi is some of those organizations where you're working hands-on might help be a way to overcome some of that. And I know SAE International and some other organizations are trying to create programming to get people, before they're in university, some exposure, and having people see it hands-on might help overcome some of that, fear.
Yeah, so in my experience, I think one issue that I've seen is us that are doing co-ops or internships often don't have enough to do. It's been kind of a story that I've heard from members on my team and some others, is that we know we can do it, but we need to have permission to do it. More projects, more engagement is overall just something in the industry that I think could be better, especially now because of the educational tools that are out there. It's easier than it's ever been to learn something. And I think just a little bit more trust in the capability and more engagement on the projects that are out there could go a long way.
That's excellent. So thank you very much for that question. And with just a last couple we have 1 minute left. I want to invite all of you to join me in thanking my colleague, Jonathan Nipper. If people want to know more information, they can reach out to you on some of the data you presented.
Yes, of course.
If you have interest in the URC, any of the information I shared, you can go to urcmich.org and check it out, or reach out to me directly. And holy moly, you guys are amazing. 3 future leaders here, or not even future, current leaders here in the automotive industry. And they did it. This is probably not your normal Thursday afternoon, is it? And they did great. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for being a good audience. Have a good rest of your visit here at the Auto Show.
Thank you all. Enjoy the Auto Show.